I think it is safe to say that the illicit market is very large in scale.
Early October 2025, Port Everglades, Florida. A routine cargo scan triggered a national alert. United States intelligence had traced a massive industrial network moving weapons under the cover of legitimate maritime goods, a group now known as the Black Gun Network, or Garrison Shield. Investigators found containers labeled as marine equipment that in fact held roughly 2,500 rifle kits each, while linked accounts and transfers pointed to about 12 million rounds of ammunition and nearly $200 million flowing through the system. This was not small-scale smuggling, it was a factory of death hidden inside the nation's supply chain, designed to arm criminal organizations on an industrial timetable. The political and security stakes were immediate, because a network that moves weapons at this scale can turn the border into a battlefield unless it is stopped. Could the United States cut this network before it reached the border? Or was it already too late? Stay with us and subscribe to Military Power to follow how this secret war unfolds. A tightly coordinated task force of 300 investigators moved quickly from discovery to decisive action, assembling federal and naval authorities to trace the finance and logistics of the Black Gun Network. Agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security Investigations, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives and Naval Intelligence Units operated with a single shared objective and a unified command. The first priority was maritime analysis, where analysts mapped suspicious vessel behavior by cross-referencing Coast Guard feeds with private satellite imagery. Over 6 months, investigators logged 48 anomalous transfer events between cargo ships and small unregistered boats. 12 merchant vessels were recorded switching off their automatic identification systems for roughly 42 minutes each time, and in many cases, 7 small skiff boats appeared after the blackout to receive cargo. Parallel to the maritime picture, the task force built a financial narrative by following wire movements and withdrawals. Financial analysts identified 912 transactions tied to 34 corporate fronts, and the volume of transfers suggested a steady and organized revenue stream. One account recorded a withdrawal of $12.7 million over 28 days, and investigators traced funds moving through casinos, freight firms, and cryptocurrencies to obscure recipients. Technology formed the backbone of the investigation because human observation alone could not penetrate layered concealment. Investigators integrated signals, intelligence feeds with shipping metadata and payment ledgers. By correlating radio transmissions with satellite thermal signatures and bank records, analysts created a minute-by-minute timeline that revealed when cargo moved and where payments synchronized with those moves. Operational planning used that integrated analysis to pick precise windows for intervention. Commanders watched for the shipment cycles indicated by the data and chose moments when cargo was ashore, in secured yards, or transiting known nodes. Predicting those cycles reduced risk to civilian areas and increased the chance of intercepting material in transit. Surveillance teams also used aerial reconnaissance and maritime patrols to validate the projected movements. Disruption of the network extended into finance and legal measures because seizing physical goods alone would not stop the pipeline. Agents coordinated with banking regulators and international partners to freeze accounts and execute emergency subpoenas. Forensic accountants traced funds from shell companies to service providers and identified a set of cash-intensive businesses repeatedly used to launder proceeds. Meticulous legal preparation supported the operational tempo because evidence had to hold up in court for asset seizure and indictments. Prosecutors worked with field teams to draft tailored warrants and ensure chain of custody for digital captures and intercepted communications. That legal rigor was intended to convert an operational blow into a lasting strategic setback for the organization. Communication and coordination across jurisdictions were constant because the network exploited seams between agencies. A joint operations center maintained a single common operating picture that synchronized regional efforts from Miami to inland staging areas. That unified command allowed tactical elements to move as a single force rather than as separate agencies acting in parallel, and it limited the risk of compromised plans. The pattern of vessel blackouts paired with clustered account activity and rapid large cash withdrawals formed a durable signature that could be monitored and acted upon. With assets targeted and arrests planned, the task force prepared to convert analysis into action and to test whether the hard work of intelligence could produce operational success. The investigation also faced technical challenges that required creative solutions because adversaries used simple measures to mask movement and funds. Gaps in automatic identification systems forced analysts to depend on radar echoes and thermal tracks from commercial satellites. To pierce financial opacity, the team used transaction graph analysis and blockchain tracing that revealed repeating payment hubs and intermediary accounts. Human intelligence complemented technical work by providing context data could not supply. Case officers checked port worker schedules, vendor invoices, and hotel ledgers tied to cash drops, and that information helped prioritize sites for search. Local surveillance and partner tips narrowed the field and improved the precision of warrants. International cooperation widened the reach of domestic actions because the network used multiple banking jurisdictions and offshore vehicles. Mutual legal assistance requests and embedded liaison officers allowed task force to obtain banking records and interception reports abroad. Coordinated timing of freezes and search orders prevented quick rerouting of funds and reduced the chance that evidence would be destroyed. Rapid exploitation of seized ledgers and encrypted drives closed the intelligence loop because those items often contained the next set of targets. Forensic accountants processed captured data and fed new leads back into planning. This feedback loop turned a single raid into ongoing disruption and made the network harder to rebuild. At 5:30 in the morning on October 9th, the calm of northern Texas was shattered by the sound of engines, rotor blades, and command signals transmitted through encrypted channels. The order to execute had been confirmed only minutes earlier, and within seconds, the Joint Task Force was in motion. 300 personnel from the Navy SEALs, Homeland Security Investigations, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement advanced toward a fortified compound identified as the central hub of the Black Gun Network. This location had served as the assembly and distribution point for thousands of illegal weapons moving toward the southern border. For weeks, surveillance had mapped every vehicle route, every patrol rotation, and every electrical pattern inside the perimeter. The operation was designed to be swift, precise, and overwhelming. The first breach began when SEAL teams approached from the eastern and southern flanks under cover of low visibility. Using cutting equipment, they sliced through the perimeter fencing, while aerial support provided infrared overwatch. The moment the fence fell, floodlights flared from the compound, and gunfire erupted from the upper windows. About 70 cartel gunmen opened fire with AK-type rifles and machine guns. Within seconds, the air filled with tracer rounds and smoke as the task force returned fire. Black Hawk helicopters hovered at medium altitude, providing suppressive fire with mounted .50 caliber machine guns to pin down enemy shooters. Inside the perimeter, the battle escalated quickly. 3 armored trucks attempted to break through the back gate in an effort to evacuate the network's command unit. The convoy was intercepted before it could escape. 2 vehicles were struck by AT-4 anti-armor rockets, disabling them instantly, and the third was neutralized when its engine block was destroyed by heavy caliber fire. Explosions rippled across the yard as fuel and ammunition ignited. Operators moved forward through the haze, using handheld thermal devices to track hostile movement inside warehouses. Every building contained stacks of weapons parts, ammunition crates, and assembled rifles awaiting transport. The main warehouse proved to be the most heavily defended position. SEALs breached through the loading entrance and engaged in a close-quarters firefight lasting several minutes. When the firing finally ceased, the unit secured rows of pallets carrying roughly 2,400 completed rifles, 1,800 unfinished kits, and 90,000 rounds of ammunition. In another section of the facility, agents discovered $4.6 million in cash, encrypted ledgers, and documents that outlined 3 future shipments to the Gulf Coast. The level of detail in those records confirmed the organized and industrial nature of the operation. Throughout the fight, command coordination remained constant. Communications officers in mobile command vehicles relayed live drone feeds and directed teams to reinforce positions as gunfire shifted between buildings. Medics treated several wounded operatives, while extraction crews cleared secured zones for evidence collection. Every action followed strict timing, and the assault unfolded in less than 40 minutes from the first breach to final clearance. By 6:10 in the morning, the compound was under full control of federal forces. Once resistance collapsed, engineers and explosive specialists conducted controlled demolitions to eliminate remaining stockpiles that could not be safely removed. The explosions created a chain of fireballs that lit the horizon, marking the destruction of the network's most critical node. The smoke rose high above the valley, visible for miles, and by sunrise, the area had been transformed into a field of charred steel and debris. Teams moved methodically through the wreckage to tag, photograph, and secure every recovered weapon and document. Evidence custodians logged serial numbers, weapon types, and financial codes to maintain traceability for prosecution. The operation achieved its immediate objective. 29 cartel fighters were killed during the engagement, 38 were captured alive, and dozens fled into the surrounding terrain. Several wounded suspects were treated and transferred to federal custody for interrogation. Preliminary analysis of recovered data indicated that the Texas compound acted as both a manufacturing site and an administrative center. Its destruction disrupted a logistical chain that had moved more than 180,000 rifles annually. The tactical precision of the raid demonstrated the effectiveness of combined federal and military cooperation. Every segment of the assault was the result of synchronized planning between intelligence analysts, field commanders, and air support crews. The integration of aerial overwatch with ground assault teams reduced casualties and ensured total dominance over the target area. The rapid collapse of cartel defenses proved that the task force's intelligence and preparation had been accurate. As the last teams withdrew, command declared Objective Alpha secure. The success of the Texas assault represented a major turning point in the campaign against the Black Gun Network. Yet the data retrieved from the site revealed that the organization was larger and more distributed than previously believed. Several offshore accounts and encrypted communication logs hinted at parallel facilities operating in other states and abroad. The battle in Texas had crippled one limb of the network, but the intelligence indicated that its roots extended far beyond the border. The next phase would unfold in financial centers and corporate offices rather than on open ground, showing that the war against the shadow supply chain was only beginning. 2 days after the Texas assault, the intelligence recovered from the destroyed compound set off a new chain of operations that reached beyond American soil. On the morning of October 11th, the Department of Homeland Security activated Operation Iron Ledger, also referred to in classified files as Operation Iron Chain. The objective was clear: dismantle the financial and logistical structure of the Black Gun Network before it could rebuild. What began as a single regional raid was now transforming into a continental campaign. The first front opened in Miami, where federal agents executed simultaneous warrants across the city's financial district. 34 shell companies were identified as corporate fronts used for laundering profits from the arms trade. Teams from Homeland Security Investigations, the Financial Crimes Division, and Treasury Enforcement units entered office towers, secured servers, and seized digital storage devices before data could be wiped. By the end of the day, $62 million in cash and frozen assets had been recorded. Analysts reviewing transaction logs found that more than 280 accounts were directly connected to offshore entities. Those accounts had moved approximately $740 million over the past 18 months. The evidence pointed to a complex structure that linked commercial shipping firms, freight brokers, and casino holding companies in Florida, Panama, and the Bahamas. While the Miami operations targeted the financial spine, a separate task group in San Antonio moved against the logistical branch of the same network. Acting on intelligence from captured ledgers, agents raided a storage complex used to conceal assembled weapon kits awaiting transport. When the first teams breached the site, gunfire erupted from the second floor. The exchange lasted barely 3 minutes, but was intense. 6 suspects were killed, 1 federal officer was injured, and the building partially collapsed after munitions inside detonated. Inside the compound, investigators found 5,000 rifle conversion kits, suppressors, and mechanical components hidden beneath false flooring in unregistered trucks. The discovery confirmed that the manufacturing chain remained active even after the Texas site had been destroyed. In Mexico City, coordination with the Drug Enforcement Administration and Mexican intelligence agencies opened a third front. 11 cartel intermediaries were captured in coordinated raids on safe houses across the capital. 7 vehicles loaded with smuggled rifles were intercepted on Route 85 as they prepared to head north toward the border. Mexican authorities traced the seized weapons to serial batches listed in the Florida and Texas seizures, demonstrating the depth of cross-border integration. The cooperation between agencies signaled a growing level of trust and shared intelligence between the two nations, as both recognized the transnational threat posed by industrialized arms trafficking. As these raids unfolded almost simultaneously, command centers in Washington and Mexico City maintained constant communication. Data extracted from seized servers in Miami began to reveal additional layers of laundering activity. Several financial accounts used identical transaction patterns at fixed intervals, a signal that automated transfers were being run through algorithmic scripts. Forensic teams froze these accounts before the scripts could redistribute remaining balances. Early analysis indicated that more than $245 million had been locked down across several jurisdictions, with funds routed through at least 5 separate banking systems. The speed of execution in Operation Iron Ledger was a direct result of lessons learned during the Texas offensive. Commanders insisted on immediate exploitation of captured intelligence, preventing the enemy from adjusting its operations. Evidence from one site was processed and used to authorize warrants at the next within hours. This continuity ensured that the network's leadership could not shift assets or erase records in time. The coordinated strikes deprived the organization of both physical capacity and financial liquidity. By the end of the operation, 41 high-value suspects were under federal custody. Many were mid-level coordinators responsible for logistics, financial compliance, or supply chain management. Their capture provided a new flow of intelligence about how the network operated across commercial and political boundaries. Seized documentation described routes running through maritime companies, air freight hubs, and front charities. Analysts mapped connections that stretched from Florida to Texas, through Central America, and into several Caribbean states. The data revealed that the organization's turnover exceeded $1.2 billion annually, confirming it as one of the largest illicit arms systems ever uncovered in the Western Hemisphere. The effect of the crackdown was immediate. Weapon availability among cartel cells dropped sharply, and intelligence summaries indicated a 28% decline in armed violence along 6 critical zones of the U.S.-Mexico border. Reports from Tamaulipas showed the lowest homicide rate in 8 months, and smaller towns recorded temporary calm after years of unrest. The reduction in firepower did not end cartel activity, but it disrupted the rhythm of violence that had dominated those areas. Operation Iron Ledger marked a significant shift in strategy. The focus had moved from battlefield engagements to the financial and institutional foundations that sustained organized crime. Each seizure and arrest weakened the connective tissue of the network, turning a shadow economy into an exposed target. Analysts viewed the success as evidence that interagency cooperation and rapid intelligence use could defeat even the most complex criminal enterprises. Still, the documents recovered in Miami and Mexico City contained warnings about successor cells and alternative financing channels. The campaign had achieved a major breakthrough, yet investigators knew that the network's remnants would attempt to adapt. The battle had expanded across borders, but the larger war against the machinery of illegal arms would continue to evolve. By mid-October, the scale of the operation had become unmistakable. What began as a single port investigation in Florida had grown into one of the largest law enforcement efforts in modern American history. The Black Gun Network, a criminal enterprise valued at nearly $1.2 billion, was now in ruins. The combined seizures from Port Everglades, Texas, Miami, San Antonio, and Mexico City revealed more than 17,000 firearms and millions of rounds of ammunition taken out of circulation. Each weapon removed represented one less instrument of violence, and each seized account reduced the financial capacity of cartels that had long thrived on hidden trade routes and political manipulation. Analysts assessed the network's downfall as both a tactical and economic victory. The immediate effect was measurable. Within 2 weeks of the coordinated operations, border security reports documented a 28% reduction in armed incidents across 6 critical corridors between Texas and northern Mexico. Intelligence summaries confirmed that the flow of smuggled rifles into cartel territories had slowed to its lowest level in nearly a year. In the state of Tamaulipas, which had suffered persistent cartel violence, homicide figures fell to a record low, providing temporary relief to communities that had endured years of insecurity. For the first time in months, several towns recorded nights without gunfire. The data indicated that the collapse of the arms supply chain had disrupted cartel operations far beyond the loss of weapons alone. Intercepted communications showed confusion among mid-level commanders and shortages in local inventories. Groups that had relied on steady inflows of American-sourced components were forced to compete for limited stock, increasing internal friction and reducing their ability to coordinate large-scale attacks. Law enforcement agencies used the pause in violence to consolidate control along highways and border crossings, seizing additional contraband and dismantling logistical routes that had previously been untouchable. The political dimension of the case carried equal weight. Forensic accountants traced a portion of the seized funds to political action committees registered in several U.S. states. Those financial trails suggested a pattern of indirect contributions designed to influence local officials and regulatory oversight. Federal investigators opened secondary inquiries to determine whether individuals within state administrations had received illicit support in exchange for relaxed inspections or favorable contracting. While no formal charges had yet been announced, the discovery revealed how deeply the network had penetrated legitimate systems. It also demonstrated the necessity of financial transparency in preventing criminal organizations from shaping political outcomes. The exposure of such connections sparked a wider public debate about accountability and security. National media outlets highlighted Operation Iron Ledger as the most comprehensive arms crackdown in a decade. Editorial boards described it as a model of interagency coordination and a reminder of the link between organized crime and political corruption. Public reaction was strong and largely supportive. Veterans associations credited the operation with preventing future bloodshed, and advocacy groups for families affected by cartel violence publicly commended the effort. Many viewed the arrests and seizures not simply as enforcement actions, but as symbols of national resilience against transnational threats. In Washington, policy analysts examined the long-term implications of the operation. The dismantling of the Black Gun Network demonstrated that a unified federal approach could neutralize even the most entrenched supply chains. Agencies now had a template for combining tactical operations with financial and digital investigations. The lessons drawn from this campaign were expected to shape future strategies against narcotics, human trafficking, and cybercrime. The results also provided leverage for renewed cooperation with regional allies, particularly Mexico and several Caribbean nations, which saw firsthand the benefits of synchronized enforcement. Despite the celebration, experts warned that the victory carried inherent risks. History showed that dismantled organizations often reconstituted through smaller, more agile cells. The financial intelligence gathered during Operation Iron Ledger revealed early signs of such fragmentation, with residual funds moving towards Central America and emerging payment networks using decentralized digital currencies. Analysts cautioned that if not continuously monitored, these channels could evolve into the foundation of a new arms ecosystem. The Department of Homeland Security responded by establishing a permanent task unit focused on tracking post-seizure financial flows and coordinating with international banking watchdogs. From an economic perspective, the destruction of a $1.2 billion criminal enterprise created ripple effects in both legitimate and underground markets. Legal manufacturers experienced a brief spike in component demand as replacement networks sought alternative sources. Meanwhile, insurance and shipping industries reviewed their own protocols after learning that legitimate logistics systems had been exploited for years. The crackdown encouraged wider scrutiny of export documentation, port auditing, and supply chain verification across the private sector. For the affected regions, the impact extended beyond immediate security improvements. Local economies near the border began to stabilize as trade and transport activity resumed without the constant threat of armed interference. Municipal authorities reported modest increases in investment and tourism as perceptions of safety improved. Although these gains were fragile, they underscored how the removal of organized violence could quickly generate visible social benefits. By the end of October, federal briefings described the combined outcome as a decisive victory with enduring consequences. The Black Gun Network's infrastructure had been dismantled, its assets frozen, and its leadership scattered. Yet within the walls of the operations center, analysts remained cautious. The war against arms trafficking was evolving from direct confrontation to a broader contest of information, finance, and technology. The system had been wounded, not destroyed. The next phase would demand the same precision, coordination, and vigilance that brought down a billion-dollar empire in the first place. By early November, the success of Operation Iron Ledger was widely recognized, but senior officials cautioned that the story was far from over. Intelligence briefings pointed to the emergence of fragmented cells across Central America that were attempting to reorganize the remnants of the Black Gun Network. Financial monitoring systems detected new transactions routed through decentralized digital currencies and proxy accounts created in smaller jurisdictions with weak regulation. Analysts confirmed that the pattern resembled the early stages of a rebound, proving that in the world of transnational crime, defeat rarely means disappearance. Officials described the ongoing challenge as a transition from warfare to surveillance. The fight against organized arms trafficking no longer depended solely on raids or armed intervention, but on the continuous management of information, finance, and law. Agencies shifted resources towards cyber investigation units and financial compliance programs designed to track the movement of digital assets. The emphasis moved from physical battlefields to servers, ledgers, and data networks, where detection required precision and long-term commitment. Experts agreed that maintaining pressure on financial systems would prevent the reformation of new supply routes and keep future networks contained before they could expand. The broader message of Operation Iron Ledger extended beyond the immediate victory. It demonstrated that national security in the 21st century depends on a seamless partnership between technology, intelligence, and international law. The same digital systems that once concealed money now serve as instruments to expose it. Cooperation among allies has become the defining factor of success. Countries that share data, coordinate sanctions, and harmonize regulations are now capable of neutralizing global threats before they mature. The operation showed that no single nation can defeat transnational crime alone, but collective vigilance can deny criminals the environment they need to survive. In Fort Lauderdale, the aftermath remained visible. Thousands of sealed containers filled with confiscated weapons rested under tarps inside a secured hangar. Rows of steel crates stood silent, representing both the cost of complacency and the reward of persistence. Each crate told a story of prevention rather than loss, a reminder that the strength of justice lies in anticipation. The war against shadow networks never truly ends, and every operation opens the door to a new front. Justice may move slowly, but when it strikes, it leaves nothing standing. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and don't forget to share your thoughts below and subscribe to Military Power to follow the next mission shaping America's defense.